Oops, sorry about that. So my presentation is on my research question, which was, can selection policies be drafted to research to resist censorship attempts? My question was pretty narrow, but my research was pretty broad and revealed that it's more than policies that are required to beat off a censorship attempt. So without further ado, let's get started. Also, I do apologize for any background noise. I'm not at my place right now. I don't have any power, and power's not coming back for a while. So, anyway, let's move on. So, my previous findings informed my current research. So, during my interview with my partner librarian, as well as a review of the strengths and weaknesses of the partner library that I work at, I found that we excelled at making lessons that encourage students to collaboratively explore, create, think, and engage on a wide variety of topics. However, I think that our cross-class collaborative lesson attempts, i.e. with other classrooms, and our curation policy support needed some improvement. Throughout the interview with my partner librarian, I found that the theme of potential book challenges or controversy around materials was a reason why we had such an extensive book labeling system. So I decided to delve more into researching curation policies and book challenges and all that jazz to see just how big of an issue it actually was. And it didn't take very long to see that it wasn't just a big issue, it was possibly an imminent challenge, an imminent threat, if you will. There is a trend in the news, you've probably seen, that people are trying to ban books inside school libraries. And such attempts have reached far and wide, most notably in Texas, but they're hitting all of the 50 states, and they could be coming very soon to Maine. It is an election year, and organizations would love nothing more than to score political points. So, with that in mind, I decided to research this issue to see how librarians could resist this and if there's anything besides policy that might be involved. So, my research had three major findings. The first is that because book challenges are at an all-time high, the highest since 1990, according to research for school libraries, librarians in school libraries are actually starting to self-censor out of fear of these challenges. So research indicates that marginalized voices are the most likely candidates for books being censored, i.e. if your book's about someone who's African American or LGBTQ plus, that book is most likely to receive a challenge. And even though librarians know better, we have a Library Bill of Rights that spells out very clearly that the freedom of the reader is paramount. Research indicates that over half of librarians, even though they know it's shameful, have engaged in acts of self-censorship. They will either not buy a book or choose not to put a book on the shelves, or will quietly remove a book if a community member or an administrator asks for a book to be removed. No challenge, no policies followed through. And it is very understandable, the human fear that a book challenge creates. You know, you don't want a bunch of ruckus. You don't want the circus to come to your library and you don't want to lose your job. But the harm that self-censoring a book does is legion. It blocks marginalized voices from being in the library via books, and it prevents important discussions about books from happening in the first place because self-censorship has just occurred. I found this statistic really disheartening, but it's very easy to understand. And I think it's something as librarians that we need to work on. My research indicates ways of doing that. We'll get to that later. Second thing we found was that selection policies do exist, but their strength varies wildly. So most libraries, according to research you can see on the right, have about 81% have policies on the books, but they're not very strong. Only 25% have a mission statement, and 14% have something about intellectual freedom with corresponding documentation. And some of those documents had not been revised or updated for over a decade. That includes those of my own partner library. Those were drafted in 2009, all policies related to book challenges. Um, and given that book challenges are at an all-time high and that high is increasing in intensity, if not in number, I think it makes sense that school librarians lead the charge in redeveloping curation policies to reflect the times that we live in so that our libraries don't fall under the specter of censorship. Finally, the third thing I found in my research was that basically the way book challenges work now, it's not just an angry parent, which is about, like, according to research, 40% of the challenges. It's a concerted attempt by actors who are mobilizing social, economic, and cultural capital to try to censor books, which is one of the reasons that librarians self censor, right? It's kind of scary to have an organized force coming at you. But research indicates that if librarians leverage the same capital, they can to protect the intellectual freedom of children, they can stave off such censorship attempts. To build this capital, research indicates that it's very important to have a good, healthy working relationship with administrators in particular. Librarians will soft censor, often at the request of an administrator. But at the same time, research indicates that when librarians experience book censorship challenges, if an administrator's in their corner, it makes the whole process so much easier to deal with. So administrators are super key here in making sure these censorship attempts get invalidated. So what does all of this research mean? So to prepare for a book challenge, the following seems to be quite important. Number one, updated policies. Your policies must be updated to reflect current trends as well as much stronger language. If it's not, it's weak and it's open to exploitation. Number two, good working relationships with admin staff and relevant community allies, whoever they might turn out to be. Absent these relationships, you don't have the capital to take on a large scale book challenge. And then finally, please don't self-censor. Our library has a soft self-censor system. We basically reserve parts of the library for middle school only. And that does make some sense, but only to a point. It seems to be that the best philosophy is just to release the book and let what happens happen, because those discussions are important and we have to trust the intellectual freedom of the readers. Otherwise, we are trusting the selfishness of the intellectual freedom of the censor, and that's not a good thing for school libraries. And here is a reference page for my sources. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation.